Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Everyday EDC. As you can see, we're on our way to work. This is a truck dump. And my other phone is hooked up to the car. This is not a truck dump. This is going to be a truck chat. I will do a pocket dump here as soon as I stop turning. But today's topic of conversation. Let's talk about that taboo topic. Counterfeit knives. Yep, we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about counterfeit knives, and there's a reason behind it. Recently had a couple discussions with a Chinese manufacturer that, eventually you guys are going to be able to put two and two together, but I will, for the sake of not associating the two, I will leave the names out. You guys probably already know, but like I said, this is a good thing. This conversation overall is a good thing. Let me preface this conversation with those of you that are about to be like, you're an American, buy American. The counterfeits are evil. I don't disagree with that statement. Let me go on record to say that I think counterfeits and clones are absolutely wrong. I don't think that there's any place for them in the American economy. Notice I said American. There's a reason for that, and it kind of goes into some learnings that we had about it. So that's my stance. So if you guys try to distort whatever the hell I say, that's the stance, okay? Second, not bragging or anything like that, but guys, I was in the Navy for 7.5 years, okay? So those of you that want to come after, people and be like, that's un-American, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I served, so some of you that did, thank you for your service, blah, blah, blah. I'm not looking for that, but I'm telling you, that's kind of the American way. That's what the Americans, consider as a patriot or somebody like that. I don't consider myself all of that, but that gives some preface to what I'm about to say to kind of cushion the blow, I guess. So this is coming from a very unbiased perspective, but without getting into the nitty-gritty yet, I haven't hit you guys with one of these in a while, and this has been eating at me, so I have to do it. And again, like usual, the camera lens is right there, but I keep looking right there, whatever. So, first pocket dump. This is my 5th pocket knife. Not really a 5th pocket knife. It's a little bit larger than a 5th pocket knife, but it works. This is my QSP Penguin. You guys already know my feelings about this. Had I gotten this knife as my first knife ever, this might have been the last knife that I've ever gotten. It is fantastic. Next, it's a QSP Thursday. This, ladies and gentlemen, is my QSP Legatus. Now, I didn't hear hardly anything on the Legatus, but the reason that I got it is because I'm a QSP fanboy, and I figured, you know what? If there's any knife that I want to try that's probably overpriced, I wouldn't mind trying this one, the QSP Legatus. The more I carry it, the more I freaking love it. And by the way, ow, see that? Thank God I hit my nail. Action stupid. Okay, moving on. There's your pocket knife. You got to see some knives. You happy? So, counterfeit knives. This person that I was discussing, their manufacturing and stuff with, was a really cool experience. I had a 2-hour-long conversation with a Chinese manufacturer who's trying to break in. Again, some of you guys can guess the name. I will neither confirm nor deny, just because I don't want to associate the name with what they're trying to get away from, right? But in the conversations, this manufacturer's trying to break in. They have some experience from Kaiser that's behind them. Their designer's been with Kaiser for about 5 years. The guy who's heading the group up was with Kaiser for a couple years. Very knowledgeable about knives, very knowledgeable about the manufacturing process, and very knowledgeable about design work. But it kind of seems they might be a little disconnected from a marketing standpoint, okay? This is a company that, when they first released the knives and were selling them, they were selling them on the same website as the OEM, and the OEM happens to make counterfeit knives. Counterfeit, clone knives, whatever you want to call them. But I don't know. I'm sure there's a difference in terms, but I'm going to lump the two together. So, they're making counterfeit knives at this OEM. The OEM's been doing that for quite some time. Now the OEM is making this person's knives. And it's no longer this person's knives, it's this company's knives. And in fact, the company moved, kind of, from my understanding, to push to become much more legitimate and to basically get away from the counterfeits and clones. They want to hit the enthusiast market. They want to do the right thing. But what is the right thing? Okay, so that's where the counterfeit discussion comes in. It's less about this company, more about the learnings I had with this individual about the Chinese culture. So you guys need to understand, and some of you won't give a damn, and that's fine. I mean, some people are just, I don't want to say closed-minded, but yeah, Jojo and I were talking, and it's basically a skeptically optimistic or optimistically skeptic. You know, you gotta treat everything that you need proof, but you want to believe. Like, you want to believe in certain things, and that applies to everything. So I want to believe that this company wants to do the right thing. And going back to it, I asked, what is the right thing? So in China, we already know that the population in China is so utterly overpopulated that the Chinese government taxes the number of children that you have. Very loosely based facts there. I don't have the details, but that's a general consensus. You know, you hear these horror stories of like, they can only have 2 or 3 kids or something. It's like 2 kids and then the third kid, if the second kid was a girl but the third kid was a boy, it's going to be like they end up giving the girl up for adoption. It's kind of like, it's savage, but it's you know, kind of is it communist or socialist? I think it's communist. And so it's not a good environment that, you know, people living under like a democratic rule are used to. So they're already overpopulated. Overpopulation probably means higher rates of unemployment. Higher rates of unemployment means a lot of homeless people, a lot of people struggling to get by. I'm not painting a sob story picture. I'm painting a picture so that you guys kind of understand the way I understood what's going on. Second, in China and Japan, they have this weird thing where there might be 2 companies that are like one company, if that makes sense. I've dealt with it through manufacturing. Some companies, they have like another company that deals strictly with international sales of their product, but they're considered like part of the name of the product, even though it's not the same company. That's a hard concept for Americans because that's not, think of it like a franchise, kind of. One McDonald's doesn't necessarily do what the other McDonald's does. It's kind of that concept, but different. Same, but different, right? Okay, so we kind of got those 2 foundations laid. The Chinese culture also doesn't believe in patents, or they don't respect patents, or they don't, whatever that case is, right? Which leads into counterfeits and clones. So there's nothing in their legal system that states that they can't basically clone another knife. And it's kind of ironic that they don't clone each other's. So that's a thought process, right? They don't want to clone an American knife and shit, but that's probably a different discussion. Or maybe diving into it deeper, maybe they just can't clone each other, I don't know. But where it takes you is, they don't believe in that. Now that's a hard concept for us to grasp. They don't believe in counterfeits and clones. They don't believe in patents. They don't believe in trademarks. They don't believe in copyright, right? It's just not part of their system. That's not how they were raised. Have you ever been around somebody that was raised entirely different than you, and you found that some of the ways that they believe about certain things are so utterly obscure that you can't even believe that they're actually believing that, right? That's what I'm trying to get at, is I don't think it's so much the manufacturers or the OEMs that are at fault. It's the way that their government treats it, and the way that they're raised, and the way that their culture goes. It doesn't make it bad or right, or bad or good. It kind of makes it good from an American perspective, right? You're taking my hard-earned work and designs, and you're turning it into something and making profit off of me and making a much less stable product. Let's see if I can stabilize my camera. Let's see if that's better. A much less stable product, a much crappier product, right? Now let's fast forward and look at the knife market. I hope you guys are following my train of thought. I'm going to try to wrap it all together in the end. I'm kind of, again, you know, I didn't script this. I didn't write this out. It's just been something that's been on my mind for a while. Let's fast forward and look at the knife market itself. Holy shit. Knives are expensive. Even Civivi knives nowadays. Remember the first knife that you ever bought that was a real knife, okay? I want you guys to think back. If I think really hard, I can remember that first pair of shoes, right? Think about that first knife. And think about how you felt about however much you spent on it, 60, 80, 120. Think about, 2 months before you bought that knife, where was your comfort zone in purchase, like in your budgetary allocation to knives, right? Hey, that's a $10, that looks cool, that's a $10 knife, that's sweet. And then you bought your first knife, and it was like 140 bucks. And you probably bought it before you really knew what you were doing. You might have done your research, you might have said, okay, this, okay, that. But you probably bought it before you understood and appreciated why it cost so much money. I mean, for me, I always tell this story. The Benchmade Bug Out, the bare bones version, was the very first knife that I've ever owned that was over $100. And in hand, I was so disenchanted. You were like, what? Why does this cost so much? I don't get it. I don't get it. But I didn't know edge geometry. I didn't know hardness factors. I didn't know chemistry of steel. I didn't know handle materials. I didn't know action. I didn't know fit and finish. You don't know any of those things. When you first get into it, you just don't appreciate it. So the more you learn, the more you're like, that's why it costs so much. But that very first notion, right, of holy shit, that knife is $80. America is a pretty well, and I'm only speaking about Americans, but this kind of applies to, the free European countries, Australia and stuff like that, where it's mainly democratic. Poverty isn't the main population, right? There's a lot of poverty, but it doesn't overtake the country. Arguable, and I don't want to argue it. If you want to argue it, go ahead. But there's other countries, right, such as India, Pakistan, these different countries, China, China, they suffer from poverty. I mean, to them, $5 is like food for a week or whatever, that not factual, that's just kind of throwing it off the cuff. But you guys get what I'm saying. These countries really, really struggle financially, and they have a lot of poverty-stricken places. Look at Africa, there's all these like sob story commercials, and you got, who's the chick in the background that's singing, it's like that super sad song, and you see the puppies crying and everything. But you see these kids running around without clothes on, and the whole point is, hey, let's give to them, let's help them out. Now you might be asking yourself, how does this pertain to counterfeits and clones? So the way this kind of all wraps together is the way it was explained to me is that in China, there's so many people and there's so little jobs. It's like the easiest way to make some money in certain industries is to counterfeit and clone certain things. We are under the impression that those counterfeits and clones are targeted at us. They're not. They are not targeted at America. Now, the target doesn't matter. Yes, you're stealing somebody, stealing. It doesn't matter where it's going to. But we need to understand this. It's not targeted at us. That type of stuff's targeted at the poverty-stricken countries, right? It's targeted at the Indias and don't get me wrong. There's also wealthy portions of India, I'm sure, but it's just. And don't take it offensively if I name a country you're from. I don't, I'm kind of a layman when it comes to that. But these are the typical, and this was what was described to me. So you got India, Pakistan, the Africas, and you name it, the stuff that we don't even hear of. They're poverty stricken. So what do these people do? They need tools too, right? And that is how the mind works of a Chinese OEM that's making counterfeits and clones. From my understanding. Maybe I was duped, but it made a whole hell of a lot of sense. Does it make it right? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, and I stand by that first statement that I do not believe that counterfeits and clones are right. That doesn't mean you can't come up with your own design and make, there's plenty of arguments to be made, but if you were raised in a way that is not wrong, and that is one of your only sources of income, sorry, keep looking over here, that is one of your only sources of income, and it's an easy way to provide for like a little community. These little OEM manufacturers, we need to be careful, right? These little OEMs that make clones are all over the place in China. It is like, it's again, like a McDonald's on the side of the road. That's what these places do. They're all over because it's one of the easiest things that people can get up and go to work and make money and provide for their families. So, it's a very difficult topic to approach. You kind of run the risk of talking about it as a YouTuber to have, the whole community chastise you. You're sympathizing. I kind of am, but it's not from the standpoint of I believe what they're doing is right, but it does help to understand why. And so all this criticism and all this hate, it kind of goes back to a nationalist pride, but more of an extremist nationalist pride type of thing. And yeah, believe in America. America's great. It's got plenty of pitfalls itself, though. I mean, there's plenty of things that we shouldn't do that we do, and vice versa. There's plenty of decisions made that aren't right. And that goes all over the world. And remember, if you weren't, prime example, if you weren't raised as a Buddhist, or maybe one that's a little bit more familiar, if you weren't raised as a Catholic, okay? You're not raised as a Catholic, you know nothing of the Catholic religion. Nothing. You were raised in a, well, not agnostic, it would be more of an atheist household, but atheist has that weird connotation with it too. Even though it's not negative, it comes off as negative just depending on who's judging you in the moment. But let's say you didn't know anything about Catholicism. And then, like me, married a woman who was Catholic. Now all of a sudden I have to learn, because she wanted to get married in a Catholic church. First of all, their one Catholic church wouldn't marry us because I wasn't a member and she hadn't gone in a while, and her mother hadn't donated to the church in a period of time. Totally different topic, totally different discussion that I won't have on this YouTube channel. I don't think. I might. I don't know. Who gives a shit? But so then we found a priest or a father. I don't know what the terminology is, that would marry us, and he was super cool guy. I didn't have to go through the whole Catholic setup. I didn't have to go through the courses and stuff to become an official Catholic to marry us. He understood kind of the New Age way of things. But I was thrown into this world where it was just totally different. Now, I'm very familiar with a lot of different religions, did a lot of different research. I even researched Catholicism, but I never actually visited a Catholic church, or at least in the manner of where I'm going to be one of the highlighted people that's going through a ceremony or whatnot. So I'm sitting in a sermon. I got yelled at twice in front of the masses because I was drinking out of a plastic bottle, which is apparently not okay in this mass. And B, I had my child's car seat in the aisle but tucked against the pew, and I got yelled at. Like, he straight up calls you out in front of people. Hilarious. In hindsight, you're like, oh, shit. But, I mean, it's a totally different world. So and to me, I'm like, dude, what the hell? My point is, I deviated, but my point here is that you don't understand something if you weren't raised in a particular way. Another one is you know, you grow up in a certain area where a ethnicity or race is predominantly one color, and then you happen to intermingle with others of a different color, and you can label whatever color you want. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's whites, blacks, Mexicans, whatever. And in the Navy, one of my best friends, I grew up in a predominantly white town, right? In the Navy, one of my best friends was from Compton, right outside of LA, or inside of LA, whatever. And we got really close, and then we would have long nights of drinking where we would just pretty much talk about how you grew up. And there was no judgment. It was just like, wow, what a totally different world, right? That's what I'm referring to when I'm talking to Chinese people. They're raised in a totally different country, not even a different state or different city. And their morals and the things that they believe in are totally different than the way we were raised. So chastising certain companies for doing certain things, I don't know, just don't buy it, right? Don't support it, because that's not the American way. But there's no reason to totally belittle a company that does that. It's people trying to really just provide for themselves. It's a very heavy topic. I'm going to get a lot of people that disagree. But more so into that, this company, to circle all the way around, this company happened to be involved with an OEM that does counterfeits and clones, and they're trying to start their own legitimate business. Like I said, they're kind of married to the OEM. They're like one, but they're not one. Like, the section of the product that's being made is a totally different name, even though it's under the umbrella, if that makes sense. Their goal is to get away from counterfeits and clones. But their factory can't stay open without making some. And that's where the previous stuff comes from. So I guess what I'm asking some of the knife community to do is, when you're listening to this, maybe I'm not conveying this in the right way, but you need to understand one thing. just because you weren't raised in a specific way, that doesn't mean that somebody who was raised entirely different is wrong. That's perspective and not fact, okay? Understand the difference of your perspective and your opinion versus factual information. And also understand that there's cultural differences wherever you go. I mean, I am not the most pacifist. I'm not the most patriotic. I love my country. I love my people, but I love all people. I don't judge anybody unless you're a douchebag. So it's like one of those, you know. And you guys are going to see reviews coming out from me, from this company, trying to do their own thing, that have had a shaky past, and I think they're doing something really cool, but we have to understand where they come from. Now, part of the reason I'm not putting a name on the company is I don't want you guys to misconstrue what I'm saying and turn it and just put it on them, right? But second of all, I was telling the guy, I'm like, dude, you need to tell your story. People need to understand what they're doing, what they're getting into, who you are. You know, they need to understand who this company is, because in my opinion, the perfect knife has already been made 100 different times. I told him flat out, I go, you're never going to make the perfect knife. And if you do, it's just going to be among the other perfect knives. Because once again, perfect is subjective. It is not objective. We can look at it as objectively as possible, but there's always going to be differences based on your bias and preferences. So I told him, I'm like, dude, you're never going to make the perfect knife. It's not about making the perfect knife. It's about making a quality product. It's about doing the best you can and putting everything you got into that product. And if it's not perfect for Joe Blow, but it's perfect for fucking, excuse the language, Jane Smith, then, you know, then it's perfect to her, but not perfect to him. As long as you did everything you can, you never cut corners, you did X, Y, and Z, I mean, that's what you got to do. But you got to tell people your story. Because otherwise, you're going to get this stigma, and people are just going to not know anything about you, and they're just going to assume the worst, because that's what we do. Negativity prevails. It's so easy to be negative over positive. A prime example of how the perfect knife's already been made several times. Well, let me finish this. I told him the perfect knife's already been made several times. You need to get people to know who you are. You need to make yourself and the company a person. Make it a living, breathing thing that somebody can associate and rationalize and feel a connection to, more so than just the knife. It's very rare that a knife comes out of the blue that shakes the world and it takes over and stays in that position if the person behind it sucks. I go, you need to let them know who you are, and you need to make customer service your number one fucking goal. You need to treat everybody as an individual, treat them all with respect. I go, prime example is EEDC. That guy freaking wowed me. Talking back and forth with him about his EMP Nimble was just incredible. Getting to know the guy was incredible. Vero Engineering, I was like, hey, your bearings are getting all jacked up. Like, I don't know what's going on. No charge, sent me more bearings. In hindsight, like, I cleaned it up and I looked through, it wasn't the bearings. It was the race that the detent was on. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And they didn't care. You know, it's like one of those things that were like, hey, you know, just be happy with your knife. We stand by our product. I go, that's what you need to do. I go, you can't be a dick. Looking at you, Medford, asshole. I don't mean it that harsh, but I've had pretty much one experience with them, and it was negative. And what it does is it makes me never want to purchase one of their knives. And that's what I was telling them. I was like, dude, there's people associate and personify things and come together with something because it's more than just a knife to them. I go, that's what you need to do if you want to sell this shit. Be open and honest about who you are. Be open and honest about your history. Your history's fantastic. They didn't even want to tell people they were from Kaiser. And I'm like, why? I go, dude, that's huge. Kaiser's huge. Kaiser's freaking awesome. You need to tell people this. Now it gives you some credibility. So, all in all, they're going to be sending me some knives. I am going to do my best to take these knives in and get them chemically checked. I will get them HRC tested before I do anything. And I told them I was going to do that. I'm like, dude, I'm going to rip your shit apart, and I'm going to go get it checked. I'm going to get it HRC tested. I have the means to do so, I believe. And, you know, it'll add validity or totally discredit you, one way or the other, you know. But I'm not trying to do one or the other, but it's something that has to be done with somebody who's relatively unknown. And he was more than excited because he stands by the product. He's excited to see the results. He's excited to see how it will add validity to what he does. And mind you, my meeting with him was at 8 in the morning, which is 9 o'clock their time. I was up all night with my child. I slept until 8:50 like a jackass. And I'm like, oh shit. I check my email, there's a link at 7:55 an hour prior. I click it just to see. The poor guy's sitting there in his office at 10 o'clock at night waiting to talk to me. Like, they want to do well. This company wants to do well. They want to do the right thing. So, I haven't even felt the knives yet. This has just been on my mind. That's all I got for you guys today. It's a very in-depth. Let me know your thoughts, and let me know. I never, including myself, would say we accept counterfeits and clones. I prefer to buy Chinese over American. That's never something that comes out of your mind, nor is that something that comes out of your mouth, right? But the hard part is understanding something that you've never been open to in the past. And at least understanding the hardships of another people and how things get misconstrued in a way that the stigma should not be as enigmatic as it is. I might have used those words wrong. Let me know your thoughts on this. This was a fun topic. I enjoyed doing this. Also, let me know your thoughts on the new setup here. It's not permanent. This isn't my truck. This is my late father-in-law's truck, and it's awesome. So I'm going to drive it, take care of it until we find the next best thing, because the other truck's done. That's all I got for you guys. My name is Tyler. This has been Everyday EDC. Remember, don't distort my words. I am not saying it is okay to make counterfeits or clones, but we need to understand before we criticize. Stay sharp. Stay safe. Have a great day, guys. Thanks for watching.